Okay, all, thanks for joining today. I made a couple videos on how-tos and things like that, but today we are talking about, you guessed it, polymer concrete, aka urethane cement. Why is it called both of those names? To date, I'm still kind of not really sure, but for some reason people call them both, so we put both on here so there's no mistake. In a nutshell, really quick, polymer concrete is basically one of the thickest coatings that we make. It generally goes down at a thickness anywhere between 3/16 to sometimes as much as 5/8 of an inch thick. It's a very thick, very durable, very strong coating. It's a combination of our liquids and a proprietary cementitious blend that are, when blended together, get extremely hard. This is a self-leveling system, so as I gauge rake it out to the thickness that I want, it's going to level out, get very, very flat. So it's really designed for basically flat surfaces, no slope surfaces where we have water to drain to or things like that. It can be thickened up with sand and or cabosil so that it doesn't flow or slope, but predominantly it's a self-leveling system. What is polymer concrete, aka urethane cement, predominantly used in? Hospitals, morgues, meat packing plants, production facilities, kennels, industrial kitchens. Why is it used? One, because it has incredible impact resistance. It's incredibly strong, tenacious, and its wear will basically last forever. Two, it's virtually impervious to almost every chemical out there, including pH water. Now, we're not talking regular pH water, we're talking very low pH water or very high pH water, where the alkalinity or salinity can actually destroy concrete. It doesn't hurt polymer concrete at all. Third, the reason being all these other plants use it is because it has to be cleaned every night to kill and destroy all the bacteria that gets on the coating. When you do that, by law, you have to use water that's 120 degrees or hotter to kill the bacteria along with a sanitary solution. This is thermal shocking. You rinse it down with cold water, and then you spray out your soap, and then you have to hose it down with really, really hot water. So you jump from 60 degrees to about 120, 130 degrees in the matter of a few seconds. Then when you go to rinse it off again, you go back down. That's what's called thermal shocking. Any other coating, polyaspartics, epoxy, sealers, things like that, will generally fail within 2 weeks to a month. Just crumble and come apart. Polymer concrete is completely impervious to thermal shocking from now until the end of time, which is why most of these places use polymer concrete, because they have to. They have no other option. So today we're going to mix up a kit. I'm going to show you how we do it. This can go down in a regular color, which is basically kind of a nude / very light beige color. This is not a UV stable product. It can virtually amber by shining a flashlight on it. If you don't want it to amber, you don't worry about it ambering because you're using it for other aesthetic purposes where it's not available to the public, then it's not a big deal. If you don't want it to amber, generally you'll coat it with a pigmented sealer if you're not going to have it exposed to chemicals, or you can actually intricately pigment it. Today we're going to intricately pigment it about a light gray color just so you can see what we're talking about. But here in turn is the entire kit. That's our color packet there. Here's our A and B. And then our 40-pound bag of the C blend. Normally, if I'm not going to intricately color it, I'll just dump the A and B in together and I'll drill stir it up. But today, since we're going to intricately color so I can show you, I'm just going to dump the A in first. This little bag is actually water soluble. There's water in the A. So I'm going to dump the A side out first in its entirety. And then first, I'm just going to drop this bag in and drill stir this for about a minute or so. You can see the pigment starting to float around. And now the pigment is turning the A side to a light gray color. Once I'm sure there's no more free floating pigment, I will add the B. Once I add the B, I'm going to drill stir this for about another 20 seconds because I want to wet out the A and B together first so that it's a harmonious mix. And when you've turned it to this color, you know that you've wet out the A and B. So now I'm going to slowly but steadily add the C blend, spinning fairly quickly. By the way, this is a paddle mixer. It's a 1200 RPM drill. I highly recommend a plug-in drill, not a battery drill. You're going to pull a lot of torque and a lot of amps once this gets thicker, and you'll have a steady flow of electricity and power with a plug-in drill versus a battery. You don't have to drill stir this very long, but you do have to make sure that you wet out all the material. Generally 30 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds. Today we're going to gauge rake this out at 1/4 of an inch. This is a gauge rake. At each end are 2 cams. You'll see right here, it sticks out 1/4 inch higher than this flat bar. So as I rake this, I'm going to make sure that all my product stays at 1/4 inch thick. Whenever I do rake, I always make sure that my handle is about waist high. If I'm too low, it's going to get thicker. If I'm too high, it's going to get thinner. So try to keep it about waist height. It's always good to shake off your rake so you get all the excess off. Obviously, if this was a wall right here, I'd be getting it right up to the wall. And then I'm just going to slowly and evenly pull it down till I run out of product. Now, I know all this is basically 1/4 of an inch thick, so I'm going to go over here to the middle, pull down the excess I have in here. If I want to move it around, I can. It's not a big deal. You can move your product around to where you want it to go. Obviously, this product yielded about 5 gallons worth of material. But at 1/4 inch thick, this board is exactly 32 square feet. And we can see that I covered about 85% of it. So I probably just yielded here about 1, 2, 3, 4, roughly about 27 square feet that I just got from this kit at 1/4 inch thick. So depending on how flat and level your floor is, you're going to average between 25 to 28 square feet at 1/4 inch thick. The thickness or the coverage rate will change the thinner you go or the thicker you go. So now that we've raked it out, the next kit will be poured right here. And the guy that has the rake is going to continue to rake and blend one kit to the next, keeping a very wet edge. You never want your edges to start to dry or to kick off. They have to be freshly wet and blend one kit to the next. If you let this sit too long and the water starts to hydrate out, it starts to cure, and you put a wet kit next to it, you'll get what we call a cold joint, and a lot of times that could cause it to crack right there. So always stay on top of it, keep the kits coming, keep the mix going. Depending on whether you have 500 square feet or 5,000 square feet, you want to always keep a wet edge, which means you need to make sure that you have enough employees to do this. After this has been gauge raked out, sat for a few minutes, you're going to take a spike roller. Now, this is really important. Not all spike rollers are created equal. This is a Midwest rake spike roller. The spikes are 13/16 of an inch long, almost an inch long. You want really long spikes when you're doing at least 1/4 inch or thicker, because if the spikes are too short, if they were only half this length, this product is too thick and heavy and it would start to overwhelm the spikes, and then you would just make a sludgy mess. So you need really, really long spikes so they can roll through it. What we're doing now is we're going to aerate it out, help to release any air that may be in this, causing the coating to compact down and sink down even lower so that it gets very, very dense, giving it an extremely high PSI. So the spike roller guy is simply going to come along. He doesn't even need to pick up and put down. He just kind of overlaps and just keeps going steadily across. The spike roller guy will be following the gauge raking guy a few kits behind. And they will continue this process until the floor is done. Once you start polymer concrete, there is no stopping until the entire floor is done. There is no little break point or, hey, let's stop right here for 10 minutes. No, as soon as this starts, you have to go, unless you already have an established stop point, like a Schluter strip or a saw cut line that you've put in there, or if you're actually going to stop at a certain expansion joint and not go any further, that's a good place to stop too. But generally, yeah, once you start, you don't stop until the floor is done. Now, after this has been gauge raked and spike rolled, you can see how flat and glassy and leveled this gets. It's a very, very easy product to put down. The only catch is it's fairly laborious. So depending on how many square feet you have is going to dictate how many guys you're going to need and how long they're going to have to work to finish the floor. Once this is done, you're kind of at a finish point right now, depending on what they need this floor for. At this point, I can broadcast sand into here, silica sand, 20 grit, 30 grit, or quartz, for added impact resistance and slip resistance, if it's needed. If it's not needed, where employees aren't going to be, then some guys might leave it exactly like this. Now, at this point, this is good for chemical spills. This is good for around production machinery that leak oil or hydraulic fluid. This is good for food facilities where animal fat might be spilled. Anything that lands on polymer concrete cannot get through it. It can't get to the concrete. It can't get to the soil. It will dead stop whatever lands on it so that it can't go anywhere else. This is why it's predominantly mandatory in a lot of facilities to have this, because concrete is not allowed to be in these facilities because concrete will absorb some of these acids, these fats, these bacteria, and they don't want that getting to the soil. So you actually have to put polymer concrete down because it can't get past polymer concrete. So at this point, depending on what we're using this floor for, we're done. We can come back the next day and leave it just as it is, and then it's return to service, foot traffic, generally within 24 hours. Forklift and or vehicle traffic, generally 48 hours, depending on the temperature. Temperature will affect this. It's just like epoxy. The colder it is, the slower it'll cure. The hotter, the faster it'll cure. So always keep temperature in mind. You always want to keep your product at a cool temperature, not cold, but cool. Make sure it's manageable for you. Don't ever let this get hot or try to do it in a 110-degree day in a warehouse with no air conditioning. You'll be in a world of hurt, okay? So in a nutshell, this is urethane cement. There's many, many uses for it. Always contact technical support with any questions about using this product for a certain job or specification. It falls under a lot of categories, but it's extremely, extremely useful product. Not terribly difficult to install. It's just kind of, like I said, a little bit laborious, and you'll need a certain amount of guys for a certain amount of square feet. Anyways, feel free to reach out, ask any questions, but that is our urethane cement in a nutshell. Hope you had a good one.